This is the high-level video on recursion. So recursion for starters. So it's a way of nesting functions. So the easiest example of this is a Fibonacci function. So basically in pseudocode, we can call it fib. And it will take n, and then from this it produces, it will return fib n minus 1 plus fib n minus 2. So the function is calling itself until there's some sort of condition. So if it is just in its present form, it just has one return statement, nothing else, this will run forever. So every single recursive function needs some sort of exit case. So in terms of the fib function, we can do if n is greater than or equal to 1, or we can do less than or equal to 1, we can return n. And then else it will return this. It doesn't need an else statement because it's just sort of, it will do it implicitly. So now it has an exit case. We have a return statement if it doesn't use that exit case. And this function will keep processing until it gets to the exit case. So think about recursion and its difference to iteration, which is when you use a for loop or a while loop. The differences between these is really in terms of efficiency and simplicity. So if we were to have, say, the function fib iteratively with a for loop or a while loop, it would take a lot more code. You need to have variables to store whether it was the current value, the previous value. Like you'd need an int prev or an int cur, which you don't need in the recursive function. However, if you use a for loop, it won't need to keep calling itself, which is computationally very expensive. So there's always this sort of debate over, computing efficiency versus the efficiency for the programmer. And that's really how to determine if you're going to use recursion. So if a for loop is a lot more efficient, then it's almost always a better idea to use it. But if you're doing something with recursion that would otherwise take a for loop or a while loop, that would be very complicated and you're only doing it once, where efficiency doesn't matter, it might be a better idea to use a recursive algorithm. So it's really dependent on what works for the use case and also what works for the programming language. Things like programming languages like Lisp that are very optimized for recursion. It might be better to use a recursive function than a for loop in a lot of cases. So it's really just dependent on language, programmer, and use case.